Welcome to the Mo podcast.
A place where individual stories come to life.
This is how we need to be communicating with people. This is how we support people's personal development.
It's important to speak about people believing in people.
The more you're able to let go of your limitation, the more you step into your power, your inner authentic power.
Mo, a place for me, others, everyone.
As you wish. Cool. Without further ado, let's begin.
Okay, hi Alex, nice to see you. Great to be here on the Mo podcast. Got fond memories of my time at Mo. So I'm Jem. Let's see, who am I? I love to dance. I feel most alive when I'm dancing. I really enjoy kind of expressive, something about like authentic movement, Buto, like kind of basically wiggling around like a weirdo and allowing some deeper part of my soul to be expressed. I am pretty into meditating. I'm like borderline Buddhist, I would say. In fact, do you know what? I am literally a Buddhist. I go on a lot of silent retreats, and I found that that's really like shaped who I am in quite a significant way. I think I've always been like quite direct, and that used to be blunt and harsh. And with like a decade of Buddhism, I think it's now like thoughtfully frank and kind. At least that's what I'm working towards. But yeah, I've still definitely got some. Yeah, I'm known to be like a frank person, and I think people who love me appreciate that.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. And with that personal introduction covered, well met, would you give us an overview of everything that you consider to be work that makes up your weeks or months at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I've kind of like whittled it down a little bit in recent years. I've had quite a few different threads that I've drawn together into couples counselling, couples therapy, which is my main gig now, for most of the year. Then in the summer, I am a mobile sauna provider. Well, I don't know what title I have, but I run a festival spa basically with a business partner. So there's a kind of month or two in the summer where I park the therapy and I'm out in a field building stuff, and with a team of volunteers, and just generally really loving that kind of contrast to my normal work.
Okay, so it sounds quite seasonal.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and so like I said with the couples therapy, it's like it's kind of pulled in different elements. So I used to work as a conflict mediator, and I've also worked in behavior change with perpetrators of domestic abuse. Also worked as a facilitator a lot, especially around the reduction of violence against women and girls. So kind of there were all these different threads, and at some point I was like, well, what's the thing that like allows me to kind of meet all of what I've learned and my skills that I've gained, and couples therapy feels like a good fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that thought you were going to say, and building a sauna or creating a sauna space feels like where that takes place.
It's a fit for a different set of skills that I've gathered over the years. Like I lived in a van for a long time, and I converted my own van and then lived in this van, and it was very like hands-on. There's lots of like fixing stuff that breaks, and kind of I think that fed into being the kind of person who wants to set up a spa in a field.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, there's also in my mind this beautiful atmosphere that can manifest in saunas and those kind of spaces that can be quite contemplative, and maybe would also I'm sure there's someone in the world doing sauna based therapy sessions, or talking or coaching sessions in a sauna. So something about that feels like it might be but it might work also.
It's crossed my mind, but there's something like I feel like thinking about the couples that I work with, really the last thing they need is to be too hot, because it's stressful. They're like, but it's a nice idea. I think it's maybe a bit too dysregulating.
Yeah, putting our bodies under stress. So maybe there's something around being in that stress place, and then taking a cold plunge, and then hitting them when they're really regulated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's
Okay,
a nice idea, Alex.
So enough about your future business. So couples counselling, and then this seasonal summer work. And when you're doing this couples counselling, what does your typical work week look like?
So yeah, I'm currently doing about 10 sessions a week, spread over Tuesday to Friday. And so I'm only doing like a few a day,
Yep.
which is good. That feels like the right number. It's yeah, it's tiring, you know, and it's intense. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's, you know, absolutely like, I mean, how anyone would do 20 to 40 hours a week, I don't know.
Mm.
And I've kind of been orienting my business towards like I kind of present myself as being available for clients who like maybe in a bit of a crisis because of my mediation background.
Mhm.
You know, not that that's all of my clients, but I do end up, I sort of draw in clients who like really need, you know, it's like high intensity or they're in a very challenging place. And
Yeah.
I tend to do longer sessions with those clients, so 75 minutes. So, you know, 3 75 minutes sessions in a day with couples who are really having a tough time is enough, you know. So then yeah, the rest of
Yeah.
the time I'm doing what do we all do? I'm doing life admin, aren't I? And like chilling out, going for
Enjoying
walks,
yourself.
whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a boundary of 4 sessions a day. That's for 1 hour
Mm.
1 hour coaching. It
Hmm.
totally takes a lot of attention and focus to hold space in that way, and I want
Yeah.
to be able to bring my very best attention and focus.
Hmm. Yeah, same. Likewise. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just run us through a little bit of your background and share with our audience. You know, from your
Mm.
website in
Mm.
2016, training in mediation and nonviolent
Hmm.
communication, working as a mediator, and then training in restorative circle approach, and applying that with activist groups.
Hmm.
2019. Building your own service, doing conflict resolution, interpersonal and
Hmm.
professional contexts, and then in 2020, and I remember this very clearly because we were on the same course, you trained with Mo.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and training as a coach in the same year that you were studying a foundation in counseling and psychotherapy. Would you
Yes.
tell me a little bit about where you were at in that moment? Someone who'd done a lot of
Mm.
training and clearly had a lot of skills, a lot of them in communication and different yeah, talking approaches that might have different aims, and something drew you to coaching. Tell me about what that draw was.
Yeah, I mean it was so first off, like it was a bit of a revolving doors moment. Actually, me and my business partner had a site set up ready to do a kind of pop-up spa, outdoor spa event in Bristol on the 20th, 21st of March 2020.
Mhm.
It was the weekend before things were like flat out forbidden from happening. But we
Right.
still pulled our event anyway because people felt like it would be, we got you know, it was inappropriate to run an event at that point,
Mm.
basically, even though they hadn't been banned yet. Um, and so actually, I feel like without COVID, I was maybe on a pathway to, I would have just been running like a kind of
Yeah. Okay.
spa business. And I still had the mediation thing was going on, but it was like a kind of uh, like my sort of dreams of deepening into one-to-one work and expanding that were like sort of on a back burner. And then yeah, my industry disappearing is the thing that was like, okay, that's now. And
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have, I don't know when it would have happened without that kind of that push. Um, but yeah, I certainly had been, you know, in mediation, I just was getting this experience of thinking like, you know, I'd look at my clients and think, man, these people just need like a whole load of one-to-one work. Like there's something going on, there's their stuff going on, which is bringing them into conflict. Here I
Mm.
am with like, you know, maybe 1 3 hour session or a couple of 3 hour sessions
Yeah.
mandated to help them with the conflict, but like they're in conflict because of their like stuff, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the mediation is not enough somehow, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You find yourself solving the surface level stuff and having a really clear understanding of the roots, or maybe like just
Yeah.
seeing the start of the roots of these people and wanting to do that work.
Exactly. And I think, you know, in a way, my sort of enthusiasm, you know, I was kind of like falling over myself to begin. So, which is how come I started the Mo training and the therapy training
At
like
the same
almost
time.
concurrently. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and yeah, and at the time, I guess I was like open to both pathways,
Uh-huh.
and feel really grateful for like the two slightly different perspectives, two slightly different ways of working, even though I've ended up kind of clearly in the therapy camp.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I found the Mo course like exceptionally well set up and structured. I thought it was just such a brilliant use of our time. Like it was so well thought through, you know,
Mm.
and very clear and yeah. So I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting reflection. I was on the same course as you. I also like absolutely loved it and got so much out of it. And as someone who now delivers the course, more than 5 years later, and has seen so many iterations of the course. And like I'm currently running a course right now. We had week two this Wednesday, just 2 days ago. I feel like the course has really improved and developed, and that the course as it was fantastic and had so much room to grow. And well, probably because I've seen that in hindsight in 5 years. And yeah, at its core, the course, despite all its iterations and all its variations, has always been facilitated using the same principles that we teach in coaching. Belief, listening, being very like human-centered and directed by the people it's benefiting. Like any trainer being asked a question, their first response will always be, well, what's your first ideas on what the answer might be? Or like, what do you think the answer might be? It's very much facilitated rather than didactic or directive. Which I guess is like a big part of what we both felt and what we both gained in it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It was a trip though, like being in the kind of the studying because my foundation course was in Bath, the Bath Centre for Psychotherapy and Counselling, and it's very person-centered. That's like their kind of, well, in their foundation year anyway, that's very much their shtick. And so it was interesting, like getting the feedback of because in that context, like there's certain kind of questions that I was being taught to ask in coaching that my therapy teachers would like raise serious eyebrows at, basically.
Go on.
Because it feels like, well, I think stuff that's like I think the grow model, when you apply that, you're like asking someone, what option, like what do you want it to be, kind of thing. Like you don't, in person-centered counseling, you don't really do that. You just sort of, it's much more like, well, I mean, listen, I wouldn't say what I practice now is largely person-centered, actually. So
informed by, but isn't.
It is informed by, yeah. But it's like I see its limitations, and I think in a way I believe in the kind of like there's this kind of deep, quite beautiful sort of ethos behind person-centered counseling, which is like if you give someone this kind of supportive space, but like really don't direct them like at all, they will find healing, because all beings kind of self-actualize somehow. My feeling is like, sure, in 10 years, in 50 years, it's like people don't have the time or the money to spend this long in therapy. And like, actually, even though it's murky and even though it's complicated, actually, I do think there's some kind of leadership or guidance from the therapist is appropriate. Like, it gets you into riskier territory, and like, arguably person-centered is like, it's kind of foolproof somehow, or it's like safer somehow. But I think the safety rather also makes it kind of slower, like like faster is more dangerous and safer is slower, right? And most clients in reality probably want like a slight tune up towards like a bit faster in reality. And
the price you pay for being protected from being too involved or directing people's lives, or being like anywhere close to responsible for what happens is a pace that some people will find like painful or too slow for a normal human lifestyle. It occurs to me, like as you're sharing that, it's a little bit how I see pure coaching, and I think many coaches coach in a way that isn't pure coaching. We will be using our coaching skills consistently and at the center of everything we do, absolutely, and also occasionally sharing our own ideas, sharing our perspectives, sharing suggestions, even in the same way that we might call this mentoring, coming from a place of expertise or a place from like a slightly different perspective and sharing that, whereas pure coaching is purely just like, how do you want to get there? What do you see happening? What might you want to try? And believing fully that the coachee is totally able to achieve what they're aiming for, with purely their own knowledge. And that taking that pure coaching approach, which, like you shared around this person-centered counseling, is beautiful and robust, and in some ways is foolproof. you know, like, well, people can go as fast as they are able to go. And like, there's a real beauty to that. And I see that. And then maybe matching that with a certain pragmatism that says, and if I know I can provide something of value to my coachee, but it's from my
Yeah.
experience, my lived experience, rather than from their mind, I'm not going to hold that back. And I might actually share that.
There's another level to this as well, I think, Alex, because like part of the beef I have maybe with the person-centered approach is that like there's a kind of illusion of neutrality. Like you're saying there, you're talking about pure coaching. Okay, fine. But with the Mo framework, if I start off and I ask the question, what are your goals? Like I've already I that isn't neutral, you know, there isn't
Yeah.
I cannot inhabit a neutral
Yeah.
influence on the client. And it's the same with like I think fair person-centered counseling encodes all kinds of values, but
Mm,
like unconsciously and values around like actually values related to like culture and class and race and things as well
mm,
because it's such a like undiverse profession a lot of the time. So it's like you kind of like I'm telling myself that I'm just this kind of neutral, positive, like
yeah.
benevolent space or something, but like that's actually just already not true. So if it's
Mm.
already not true, then I'm like, well, okay. I mean, what else, what you know, with
What else can I let
like
go?
yeah, like well, yeah, and like what it's almost like how to say it like that ship sailed or something and like
Mhm.
we're already in this mucky messy world
Yeah.
anyway and like this kind of pretending that we're not is like we're not fooling anyone. Let's
Yeah.
like embrace the fact that actually I am having an influence or I am having I like I'm already involved, you know. um
Yeah. Yeah. And a constant question that comes for us all, or is like present with so many coaches, is am I too involved? Or how involved
yeah,
is
yeah,
ethical? Or how how can I be most impactful with how I balance my involvement?
yeah.
Like, you know, we're
And there's
looking
an
to have the
yeah,
greatest impact for our coachees, and how can I have that greatest, you know, what will have that greatest impact? Me being more involved or me being
yeah,
less involved? How do we walk that balance?
totally. And there's another layer to it in couples work actually because yeah, instead of it being like how involved am I with this one person, it's also like how where am I positioned within
Yeah.
like in response to their relationship somehow. And so as you know, because you're studying RLT, relational life therapy, or
Yeah.
with Terry Real, right? Terry, one of Terry Real's real like kind of I don't know, because I haven't studied with Terry Real, right? But what I kind of hear
Mm.
from the outside is like sometimes he says you should pick a side. That's the
Mm.
kind of
Yeah,
headline of like,
absolutely.
right?
That's
And
how it
so in
differs
my
from typical modalities where they're maybe a bit more passive or a bit more like, yeah, this is your experience, this is your experience. Yeah. In
exactly,
this modality,
exactly.
the practitioner is really encouraged to
Uh-huh.
yeah, to test their theory.
Exactly. So then there's another level beyond this kind of like how involved am I with my client one on one? It's also like whose side am I taking a side? Do I have a perspective? Do I have am I carrying a belief about some sort of like not exactly right or wrong, but like do I have a story about how this relationship is that I'm gonna like insert? I mean, you know, gently,
Yeah.
tentatively, but like am I gonna come down and say, hang on a minute, like I'm telling you what's going on here, or I'm telling you who needs to change their behavior or something.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, my training didn't really, you know, it didn't explicitly advocate for that kind of thing. You know, I didn't study RLT. I studied at the Contemporary Institute of Clinical Sexology, which is also great. Um, but I also have a background in behavior change, so working with perpetrators of domestic abuse,
Mm.
where like absolutely, of course, had a side, or not because
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so like the industries or the field or whatever you call it is mixed. And I'm sad to say that I think some people are there as practitioners who don't hold this value. But I was there with a real belief in the like good of all people and
Mm.
really wanting to see the best in my clients and kind of believing that they can change and
Yeah.
believing that they're kind of, you know, while their behavior is like obviously highly problematic and wrong, that there's somehow they're coming from some place of like they're very confused,
Yeah,
right?
and
Rather
that
than
they can
bad, you know.
rehabilitate themselves, or that they can come to a place where their behavior is markedly different.
Exactly, yeah. But then having that background, you know, one of the first couples that I worked with, actually, there was a moment where we were kind of digging into it and we came across some like poor consent practice on the part of one partner.
Hmm.
And I was like, I, I'm I'm just going to call it out actually because I know that
Yeah.
that's like, and actually clarity is needed here, and I do it
Yeah.
in a way that's really kind and where I don't lose rapport with the client in question.
Yeah.
But like, it isn't okay for me to just be like reflecting back what's happening, and like
Yeah.
I'm being called upon here to be clear and say, look, I'm an outside perspective on this relationship. That behavior is not okay, and I'm going
Yeah.
to support you to figure out how to do it differently. You know.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I've heard it described as being carefrontational and seems like
Yeah, nice.
maybe a bit cheesy or like yeah, there's something about the phrase that I'm not quite comfortable with. But yeah, really immediately understandable. Okay, we're going to confront this, or I'm going to be in opposition to something you've shared or your ideas
Mm,
or your direction, and I'm going to try and do it in a really caring way.
mm.
So at the moment you work with couples. Tell
Yeah.
me about where you see your coaching skill set being woven into that work.
Yeah, I mean, it's one reason because it's fairly recently that I made the switch 100% couples only, no longer taking on individual clients.
Uh-huh.
And I did that because it just really gives me space to draw on like the full range of my skill set, and I just find it more actually satisfying
Yep.
as well. And I just think it's like me doing my best work and enjoying it the most. So that's
Great.
obvious. It's a no-brainer. But yeah, I think it's like within couples work, there's like a fair amount of space for like, okay, listen, guys, here's your homework. You need to go off and do this. You need to do this exercise. You need to try this thing. There's like,
Mm,
it's really, I think because of the sort of the more person-centered flavored, like giving somebody space to really like explore and discover themselves, that happens in one-on-one therapy. Like it's just a bit different. It's a bit more like, with couples, it feels a bit more like practical a lot of the time.
mm,
Um, like depending on the individual clients, obviously, but like oftentimes it's like, they're missing this sort of their intentional space to feel connected. They're just not they're kind
mm,
of not creating spaces for healthy communication. They're like um yeah, something like pretty coachy, just like
mhm.
skill building is really relevant a lot of the time.
Yeah. And as you're
Yeah,
talking, it's coming up in my mind through my coaching lens of setting actions and accountability for
exactly.
experimenting with new strategies and reflecting on how they're landing and continuing them or discontinuing them.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I find myself saying things like, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to do that thing that you just said you'd do, which is
Mm,
straight out of Mo. And
yeah.
that's where I
Yeah,
learned
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Be like, cool. What would make that an 8 instead of a 7? And
Yeah.
like, right. And just being like, when are you actually going to do that? And which I think in a kind of classical
Yeah.
therapy person, a classic therapist doesn't say, when are you
No.
going to do that? Put a reminder in your phone. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
coaching, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Nice. And thinking about these two skill sets that overlap so much, ha where does it feel like the listening as a coach is different from the listening as a therapist?
Interesting. That's a good question. I guess maybe there's something about the emotional quality, like a therapist's listening involves like the body sense and empathy.
Yeah.
But I know I'm sure a good coach does that too, but that's my immediate go-to. I'm curious what you think, actually. I don't have an obvious answer to that straight away.
Yeah, as you were speaking, like made total sense. And I've just started therapy this January, and part of the work I'm really focused on is finding and detecting my emotions, sensing my emotions, and bringing more of my
Mm,
emotions into how I navigate life. I can tend to be
mm,
quite rational and
mm,
analytical. So
yeah.
that really like, oh yeah, this makes total sense, and this is something that my therapist has been doing with me.
Mm,
I also don't have the experience as a therapist or the training. And if I was to like shoot my shot and think about what my stereotype or my ideas around therapy are, yeah, I'd maybe imagine that a coach might be listening for slightly different things. In that
mm,
a coach might be trained or have learned to listen out for, excitement about particular things. with this idea that we're constantly trying to feed excitement into our system to build a sense of momentum or a sense of possibility. They might be listening out for like limiting beliefs or keywords, like absolute phrases that maybe where stories have grown that aren't based on evidence that we might want to like just check in on and do a bit of coaching around mindset shift. And when I'm thinking maybe a therapist is going to be listening out for, yeah, kind of references to uncomfortable emotions or references or yeah, listening out to the emotional tone of how things are related. And I mean that stereotype of like, yeah, listening out to any reference of childhood trauma or you know, family of origin, which is for me like, yeah, just such a stereotype, but that's kind of like the root of so much that happens in therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a stereotype for a reason. Yeah.
And yeah, thinking about those blends of those two toolkits, how easy do you find being a professional called on to have a positive impact on your clients that has several different skill sets inside them that have been trained in a very distinct way? You know, you didn't get one holistic training program that was how to be a coaching, counseling, mediating facilitator.
Yeah, I mean, it actually comes back again to being a reason, I think, for the couples therapy thing, because I think it just sort of feels like a home for a lot of those different skills. So I kind of feel like I can uncomplicatedly bring them all in and not feel like I'm off-piste.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it is. I had more of a challenge with that in the past. I think I've like found my integration.
yeah.
Yeah, in the early days, I was confused at times,
Mm,
And I did, actually, funnily enough, just today, had a session where, yeah, it's a couple that's actually separated,
mhm,
um, and they, they're feeling that but they're still co-parenting, they're still like around each other a lot, right?
yeah.
And it's a very early separation, but they're thinking like, maybe it's best to kind of be a bit boundaried emotionally with sort of not going into processing relationship stuff, like doing that separately, handling their own grief separately,
Mm,
which then leaves like the couples therapy space. Well, like, what do we do in this space?
mm,
And actually, I shared with them, well, I'm also a conflict mediator, and
mm,
maybe we reduce the frequency of the sessions, and I'm here as a sort of backup if you do start to get
mhm.
difficulties around childcare agreements and stuff like that, then you kind of already know you have somebody that you're going to be able to come to
Yeah.
have really difficult conversations with and be supported in that. But that was actually like I'm like explicitly proposing a renegotiation of contracts in a
Uh-huh.
sense. Like, what do we agree that this work is about? Yeah.
Mm, okay. And yeah, hearing that it feels really fluid for you to be drawing on these skill sets and that it, at least now, isn't taking
Mm.
like any conscious shifting, isn't jarring. There's no friction there. That's brilliant.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's also about finding my own like kind of yeah, like my peace with, or like comfort within the like believing in the value of the integration that I have like
Mm,
come to. And so, even if maybe a different practitioner, maybe someone with a pure therapy training might practice slightly differently to me, I'm like, while I feel good about what I'm doing, I feel confident
yeah.
that it's of value to my clients. I feel like I trust myself that I'm integrating my training well. And,
Yeah.
so then it's like it's not even that I've become clear about what's in and out of the boundary of this modality that I'm in, but actually I've also included stuff, and and like carefully assessed, am I going to include this aspect of coaching or of mediation? And I'm just like, yes, I am. And I feel
Mm,
good about that.
yeah. It seems great. I feel like,
Mm.
yeah, what you were saying about parts of a part of the coach training that comes really easy to you and like helping people set actions or like leaning into that
Mm.
accountability. Yeah, it seems like a real strength of coaching. Um, and then of course, like a lot of the emotional and trauma work from therapy. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
it's intuitive that this like, yeah, we, and with coaching, we're sometimes like, oh yeah, we talk about signposting, like clients to therapists
Mm.
or
Mm.
signposting, and like, yeah, what a blessing to have practitioners where there's that, I don't need to be speaking to one person on Monday who's going to coach me and help me make pragmatic change in my life, and another person on Thursday is going to help me unpack the emotion. And not to say we should
Mm.
all train in everything and be be these multi-skilled. It's not always needed. And in the case where you've got it, like, yeah, that's feels like a real benefit.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
And thinking of all these different skill sets, and then this kind of like one, yeah, a bit of a curveball, which is our lived experience, and which for each of us is so unique and can be so supportive to share with people. Our lived experience and also our hard-earned wisdom. I'd love to hear your reflections on how you are and aren't able to integrate that into your practice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a partnership, a couple of years into a partnership. Kind of not for the first time in a while, but for quite a long period now, I was like mostly single for like a decade or something. After
Huh.
I had a couple of long-term relationships when I was younger. I was the kind of steady relationship guy when I was in my like late teens and early 20s. And then I don't know, somehow, yeah, I then went into a kind of pendulum swing period of like really kind of not that, for a long time. Or just like shorter relationships and stuff. But anyway, so I'm kind of in this experience of like deepening into partnership and confronting a lot of my own sort of relational patterns and trauma, and like learning a lot really, and doing my like with my partner doing our own sort of like process. I mean, we're both therapists, funnily enough, so we're kind of like really unpacking stuff and understanding stuff, and like trying to learn to just do relationship-ing really, really well. And then simultaneously, I'm sitting with all these other couples and on their journey with and seeing where they're getting stuck. And I like, yeah, I mean, it's so woven in actually, like the kind of the ways that I see myself in the clients or and kind of and being like, oh yeah, right, oh, wow, that is what that looks like from the outside, and how who it's super illuminating and really like enriching, I think. But yeah, I also like frequently find myself with my clients kind of making suggestions or offering perspectives that are just directly out of my own experiences, my own recent experiences of being like, well, we had that problem and here's how we fixed it, kind of thing, and just being like, well, it's like really, it just feels very relevant. And so the kind of timing of me, I guess, shifting into really centering couples therapy, perhaps it's non-coincidentally at the same time
Wow,
as me being
yeah.
like, this deep partnership is like quite a big part of my life at the moment, or it's like one of the headline stories for me is like learning how to do partnership really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads me to this idea that I hear all the time, which is that you can only go with someone else as far as they've been themselves, or as a coach, you can only support someone as far as you've been. For example, like, and in that, for me, is the idea that I couldn't coach someone to an Olympic gold medal if I hadn't gained an Olympic gold medal, for example. Or maybe, yeah, I couldn't coach someone past this challenge in my life unless I'd from this challenge in their life, unless I'd also coached myself or been coached myself through that. Where do you stand on that idea?
Yeah, interesting question. I guess like it's making me think about the mentoring coaching distinction again a little
Mm,
bit. Like I do think that some kind of pure coaching approach like it becomes kind of like unrelated really, like what the coach has or hasn't done, or
yeah,
what the
absolutely.
coachee
Yeah.
has or hasn't done, right? And the same thing could apply. I mean, again, going back to the sort of this person-centered, like you just hold a space and people figure their own stuff out.
Mm,
Like I can hold a space so people can figure out all kinds of things. And obviously my clients have all kinds of challenges, many of which I've never had, right? And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still holding space for them to figure it out. So it's not that I think there's a limitation there. I just think that when there is relevant experience, then it helps. I mean,
Mm,
like for example, I mean, I'm non-monogamous, kinky, genderqueer,
hmm.
whole alphabet soup of things, bisexual.
Yeah.
And I often end up with clients who share those kinds of identities because they like, as I found in my own experience receiving therapy, like it just kind of helps when someone actually knows what you're on about and
Yeah,
has
they
had
feel
those
most
kinds of
comfortable.
experiences.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, there's definitely ways in which for my clients, for example, who are non-monogamous, like I don't just do think I probably do it's just a bit easier for me to support them because I know what they're on about. I've
Yeah.
had those kinds of experiences. I know the theories. I understand how it works,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm hearing, yeah, this might help me, and it absolutely won't stop me from being able to provide value when I don't have that shared experience or I don't have that specific part of my lived experience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I have a whole range of clients, and it includes people who, whom none of those identity terms apply to, right?
Right.
Um, and yeah, probably 50-50, I'd say, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That feels nice. And
Hmm.
thinking about your taking a bit of a step back and thinking about your portfolio career at the moment and the work you're doing, where do you think you might be in a few years' time with this work?
I'm like really hankering after starting a business, Alex.
Mm,
I was kind of brought up with this, like
another.
my parent. Well, yeah, another one. No, do you know, it's like, yeah, well, okay, that's revealing something about my mindset. I feel like a kind of what I mean is like a larger organization that has like multiple people working there and
Mhm.
almost like has a life of its own beyond like something that could be like handed over or sold
Yep.
versus like me doing therapy is just me, isn't it? And of
Yeah.
course it's a business.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not trying to
Understand the
downplay
distinction.
that. Right. Okay. So yeah, there's something about the kind of systems thinking and the strategy and yeah, you're right. I do already have that stuff does apply to the
Mm,
festival business that I do, but it's just that's quite limited. I mean, it's seasonal and
mhm.
and I'm just curious, like, what could I create within this space that I'm already in around therapy and couples and stuff. Like, I'm often just noodling on like interesting ideas of like, yeah, what kind of like, yeah, how could I offer more value to people in a way that's like not just me sitting there with them, but it's something that I create that people can ongoingly benefit from. Um, yeah, so I'm kind of threatening to do that at some point. I'm like often just having little
Threatening.
ideas, and then I get an idea and then I kind of geek out on it for a
Yeah. Yeah.
bit. And like I've had a few ideas that I've kind of got a little way down the road with and thought like, well, maybe that's not actually that great of an idea, so I'm going to drop that. And
Mm,
but I'm kind of waiting. I'm waiting for there's something to strike, and then I'm just gonna like, bam, let's go.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Amazing. And do you have any awareness of what a catalyst might be to create that bam, let's go moment?
Well, I think I feel it. I feel it when I basically get like strong inspiration, which comes along every now and again,
Mm,
but fairly often, to be honest. I'll get some kind of idea, and I'm like, oh, become like obsessed with this idea.
yeah.
Like,
Great.
so kind of waiting for one of them to come along where when I then do the sort of like strategic analysis of it and kind of dig deeper into the idea and start to flesh it out, that I then also think this is a good idea and I should do it,
Yeah.
rather than getting to that stage and being like, no, Jem, that's not going to work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
When there's moments in life where we have such belief in our potential or such belief in our ability
hmm.
that when we're kind of scrutinizing or just interrogating an idea, every answer is like, yeah, this will work.
Yeah, I think what I'm wanting is this kind of like I experience it in the summer when I'm working on the festival spa. It's like it's so all consuming. Like I'm just every part of my being is dedicated to what I'm doing, creating this
Mm,
space. I feel so passionate about it, and we're like, we end up doing it's the events industry. We do like pretty crazy hours, and we're just like, I'm so engrossed in it, and so and
mm,
like, I'm like, can be quite stressed, and maybe I'm like, I barely even have time to like eat properly, and I'm kind of knackered, and
mm.
but I feel so alive and so like passionate and so kind of enriched by the experience, uh, and I love that, and while my daily life, like the kind of work-life balance thing, I think of this therapy lifestyle. It's like a relatively small number of hours a week. Obviously, it takes a lot of concentration and it's kind of tiring, but then there's quite a bit of time around it. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot about that that's really great. And also, I uh, I feel like I'd like my life to have a mixture of that kind of that kind of time
Mm.
alongside some chunks, some sprints actually, where I'm just like I'm all in on something and I'm really like trying to make it happen. Yeah.
Wicked. Would you share any of those ideas with us of like what this might look like, what this
Yeah.
larger service,
Well,
what larger business might be?
yeah. I mean, I had one that's a little bit off, not the therapy thing, but I went deep on the idea of a sauna boat on the River Dart in Totnes.
Mm,
And man, I was out on a paddleboard, like taking soundings of the water depth, and it turned out there was like a design trifecta where this boat has to meet safety standards to hold passengers, right? So it can't tilt by more than 7 degrees when all 12 passengers go to one side of the boat.
Yep.
That's a pretty stable boat. It also, because it's a tidal river,
Yep.
it can't be too like deep, otherwise it won't be able to use it on many states of tide, right? And then lastly, it has to have enough capacity to be a functioning business because it needs turnover, right?
Yeah.
And turns out those 3 constraints, there is no point where those things
there's no
meet
Venn diagram.
feasibly.
Yeah, there's no center point in that. Okay.
Exactly. So I did unfortunately just have to give up, which is a shame because it would have been epic and Harbour Master was on board and yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So and then another one, maybe more in the this one remains an open thread really, is like something for an app for both parties of a partnership that I'm working with to come together and to, do exercises together. Like maybe they're answering questions where their answers are then kind of shared with each other after they've answered. Like kind of structured check-in communication tool for the couples that I'm working with like structured content for them.
Yeah.
That's that. I mean, there's people are developing those kinds of things in this space is pretty like alive with people who are creating that sort of thing, and that remains like, I mean, yeah, why am I not doing that? I don't know. Maybe I should just be doing that right now.
Yeah, Momo Podcast, also the incubator for new startup ideas.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Another one that I was like noodling on that kind of it's a bit left field, but a sex worker friend was, in fact, well, multiple sex worker friends have complained to me about the quantity of like rude, annoying, time-wasting, inappropriate, offensive messages that they have to wade through, and the kind of psychological burden of that. And I went pretty deep into investigating, like setting up calls with lots of different people in the industry to try and get an idea of like what is the nature of this problem and what kind of solution could there be. I was thinking like AI-driven message filter, essentially. But what I think I found was that there's like a lot of different platforms that people actually operate on. And so the actual technical side of making an app that would actually handle all the messages from different platforms, it just wasn't really practical. So I had to let go of that one too.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And I remember a few years ago, you getting on call with me around an idea of, this was just as AI was starting to develop and really get talked about, the idea of developing AI coaching models and feeding some of our feeding a bunch of coaching sessions into AI models to learn from, to try and provide like reasonable or like credible coaching. And or just thinking about like, hey, AI is happening and it's going to affect our industry, and it's also something that, just like synth drum effects being used in music from in like the 70s or 80s is something that can be seen as a good thing rather than a negative, and how might we be able to kind of ride that horse rather than be trampled by it. And look at the industry now with like so many people using AI chatbots to coach and even therapy as well.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Yeah. I mean, it's actually it's another reason I think for my shift into couples work is that I think that I think people are genuinely getting quite a lot of value for the one-to-one, getting their heads around their own stuff, understanding their process better. Like I think it has risks, and I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but like it's happening, people are doing it.
Yeah.
And you can get good couples advice too.
Yeah.
To be fair, relationship advice, but having both parties in the room and working with them live on their relationship is something that right now AI isn't offering anything that does that actually.
Any reasonable
so it's another reason. Yeah. So it's another actually part of where my shift is coming from. But I have been thinking like, how can I use it? And I actually already do. I do some kind of like obviously highly anonymized what's the word, like supervision style chat with Claude Pro sometimes. And get really useful insights and thoughts. I mean, obviously I then run them back past my own trained human discretion, but it can be really useful. Like it's really worthwhile. And actually I kind of something I'm noodling on at the moment is how to streamline that. And so I've been looking into protecting my clients' data obviously is of tantamount importance, paramount importance. And So I've actually discovered it's possible if I record the session and then I can like straight into an encrypted folder, and then actually my laptop's pretty new and it's powerful enough to transcribe
Yep.
and assign speakers to the audio.
Yep.
And then I can get another small AI model that runs again locally on my computer, so no data is leaving my computer,
Mm.
and then redact that, and then
Nice.
we delete the audio, we delete the unredacted transcript, and then I have a redacted transcript that was created entirely on my computer with no data going anywhere else, which,
Mm.
you know, again, stays in an encrypted folder. So then I have like, you know, just reams of like in detail what happened in my client sessions to help
Yeah.
me, which, you
What I
know,
asked.
obviously I remember, you know, I take notes and I remember, but my
Yeah.
notes are nothing like a transcript of the whole session.
Of course,
Um,
like an
so
objective record, essentially.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm excited about, obviously, with my client's permission, and I'm gonna be contacting them to just like, yeah, some of them might not want me to do this, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But clients who are up for it, having all of that to then, so that when I'm getting insights and advice and stuff, that I'm doing so with like a real, you know, full record of what's happened. And then
Yeah.
what I'm finding is it just allows me to draw on more resources, like bring up more ideas quicker, also like create, you know, a lot of clients really love homework and exercises and stuff, and like I do my best to kind of create things for them and send things to them, and
Mm.
you know, I can just offer more if I can put less of my own grunt work into that and more of like you know, getting the homework written out for me, for example, so that I'm not typing it out by hand.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff just allows me to do more basically with the same
Yeah.
same amount of my own time.
Amazing. Feels like a lot of what you're doing there is innovative, and like despite using AI, which has this real like stigma of being unethical for in so many different ways, feels like there's ways that you're making it, you know, fit for purpose or ethical
Mm.
or okay. Um,
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, you know, my client's consent is obviously a crucial component of that, right? And you know,
yeah, of
I
course.
imagine I'll get a mixture of responses, and like if anyone doesn't
Yeah,
want me to do it, obviously I won't, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm planning to also explain, you know, just kind of without boring them with technical details, but explain like what measures I'm taking to, like I said, protect their data and that, you know, because
Yeah,
that is, it is crucial, it is
transparency,
really important, you know.
credibility. Yeah, great.
Exactly, yeah.
I talk about it with a client of mine who I see weekly and have done for the
Mm.
last 4 years now.
Wow.
I think we're approaching like 170, 180 sessions together.
Wow,
And, you know,
amazing.
I type up my client notes after every session, and I've got about 15,000 words written. Um, and
Wow.
you know, you know, this client is big into AI and uses AI a lot in their work, and we've talked about where there's like an interest in doing that kind of analysis on this, you know, what is a fairly large data set over a long period of time, and where there's also like a real discomfort. And it's not something
Mm.
we've got into, and maybe one day will or one day won't. And yeah, it's interesting that these questions are coming up and these possible uses are coming up, and like the possible improvements, like the ones that you shared,
Mm.
are like emerging as yeah, viable or possible, and not just possible, but possible and possible in line with our existing values.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at the risk of getting a bit kind of technical, I do think that because I'm like, you know, I'm a bit of an AI geek. I'm kind of interested in
Mm,
it. I follow it a little bit. I read stuff about it, and there was this moment, like, oh, what is this, like maybe a year ago now, that the DeepSeek model was released, and it was like way smaller than it was its performance versus its size was like kind of groundbreaking, right?
mm,
And actually the advent of this thing of like so-called thinking models where basically you just get the AI to run for longer and it
mm.
kind of has its own chain of reasoning and checks its own work, and it allows you to use a much smaller model to achieve a comparatively positive,
Right.
comparatively like worthwhile outcome.
Yeah.
And why I'm saying all of this is because, you know, if you've got a pretty new laptop, you can actually run models that will do somewhat worthwhile stuff on your computer. And
Mm.
that does change the game a bit, you know, because your client or someone in their position would be concerned, are you going to send all this data to some server
Yeah.
in, you know,
Yeah.
Nevada? Like, do I feel comfortable with that? Where might it
Yeah.
go? That's a very different question to, are you going to run some like run an algorithm on your laptop,
Offline.
you know, Offline, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's a different question then, though. I mean, there's still the concerns about like, you don't want to overly trust the outcome, or you don't want to like give up your human oversight. But the data protection concern goes away.
Yeah, it looks and feels different, and for the right reasons. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Deep dive into tech, AI,
Yeah.
coaching, therapy, couples work, solo work, small tangents into the UK festival and event scene,
Yeah.
and spa and wellness. Jem, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure having you on and hearing your thoughts. Lastly, just tell us one thing that you're excited about that's coming up in your professional world in the next couple of months.
Well, this is it's sort of on the cusp of professional, but I'm running an event with my partner next weekend. Right here so I'm currently in the mountains in Mexico.
Yeah.
And we're running an event here at the eco community that I'm staying at next weekend. So I'm feeling excited about that. It's the first time collaborating, creating something with my partner in that kind of way.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Facilitation. We mentioned it's just for call facilitation. Yeah, I can definitely imagine your coaching skills being very active there. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jem, and I'm sure we'll see you around the Mo community.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, Alex. Great to chat to you.
Done.
Sweet. Yeah, that was fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Podventures on the Mo podcast. I am Kate, your co-host alongside Alex. If after listening to today's episode you feel compelled to share your story, please email info@mofoundation.com. We would love to hear your story and have you here as a guest on the podcast. If you have been enjoying the Mo podcast, please do leave a review. It helps the team so much understand what you want to hear more of, what type of guest speakers you enjoy. If you want to recommend a guest speaker who you think we should be talking to, let us know. We will endeavour to feature them. If you love Mo so much that you don't ever want to miss an update, subscribe to our channel so that you will be notified every time a new episode comes out and you won't miss a thing. And don't forget to answer today's question.